Because I love organization systems so much, my second grade classroom is one of those that first year teachers like to peek in on and check out. And whenever I'm giving a tour to one of them, it looks something like this. Here's my word wall behind my teacher table. And over there is my system I use to organize all my art supplies. And back behind there is where I hide when I feel like crying. And here's my pocket chart. Hello, Marielle here, and today's teaching tip is for all of you first-year teachers who are probably watching this while deleting your EdJoin account, but before you make a mid-year career change, let me reassure you that we are all losing our minds and that some of us are just better at hiding it. We all get very nervous before the first day of school. We all have lessons that definitely don't go as planned. And almost 20 years in, I still rely on the tips my mentor teachers gave me my very first year of teaching. So today, I would like to share with you the advice I've found to be the most helpful to feel confident in the classroom, especially if it's your first year in the classroom. I'm going to go over 4 different yet connected topics. The first is how to get in the confidence mindset. The second are specific tips to be a more engaging speaker so that kids actually listen. Third is to build rapport with your students so that they want to listen to you. And finally, I'm going to tell you who and how to ask for help. Whenever I'm observing a brand new teacher versus a more experienced teacher, the biggest difference that I spot immediately is presence. Experienced, successful teachers have great presence, and it begins with confidence, particularly in public speaking, but also in nonverbal cues like body language. Whenever I hear people say that they hate public speaking, the most common response I hear from others is to tell that person, "Oh, you just need to be more confident." Well, yes, obviously, but how do you become more confident when you haven't built up the experience yet? My trick is to just copy what confident people do. And then I practice it. I like to imagine that I'm an actor who just got cast to play the role of teacher, and then I approach it as any good method actor would, and I get into character. I begin by picturing someone who I think displays the type of confidence that a competent, experienced teacher would have. For you, this could be someone you know in real life, or a public figure, or even a fictional character on a show. And please don't think you need to picture someone who is over the top charismatic or showy. You want it to be someone who is engaging to listen to, not someone who is trying to be the center of attention. For example, there are actors who I think display a presence that I would describe as a calm confidence. One of my favorites is Judi Dench. There is a documentary with her called My Passion for Trees, and it's quite literally just about her and the trees on her estate, but it's fascinating to watch. And not only does she speak with intentionality, but more importantly, she's an active listener. She displays curiosity and wonder when people are speaking with her. You could also choose someone who comes off as really warm and inviting. If you're looking for someone like that, I'd suggest watching Tabitha Brown's videos. The point is, you need to find someone that you want to emulate, even if it seems like the personality is very different from yours. I don't think anyone is going to mistake me for Judi Dench, but it just needs to be someone who you can imagine in your head has been hired to play you in your bioepic. This approach might seem kind of silly, but it allows me to have some distance from Marielle Desrosiers, the person, and my role as Miss D, the teacher. That way, when something unexpected happens, I can be responsive, not reactive. Judi Dench is not going to get riled up when Michael breaks all the erasers off the pencils. Now that you're picturing someone who you're going to channel, let's go into the specific techniques that master teachers use to be a more engaging speaker and presenter. The first is to have a plan so that you don't spend your time rambling. It can be a word-for-word script, an outline with bullet points, or even just a single line in your lesson plans to cue your thought process. It kind of depends on the type of presentation, your audience, and how much time you have to put into it. I like to write notes in pencil all over my teacher's manuals to remind me exactly what I want to say, especially for things like questions to ask the students. And don't worry, you're not doing this forever. It's just until you found your natural rhythm and pacing. I always like to tell people I'm a pretty average public speaker, but I'm a fantastic public reader. Next is to slow down your speech. Most people speak too quickly, including me, but that's because I'm talking to myself right now. I don't have the visual or social cues of an audience to know when and where to pause. But when I'm teaching, I slow down so that my students can actually process everything I'm saying. If you happen to feel yourself getting nervous and starting to speak too quickly, I want you to say pause in your head. So here's what my mental narrative might sound like. Good morning, class. Pause. Today we're going to begin with community centers, but then, pause, I have a brand new phonics game for us to play. Of course, don't actually say pause out loud, but if you say it in your head, you will absolutely slow down and it'll be much easier for the students to understand what you're trying to say to them. My next observation is something I see a lot of teachers do, not just new teachers. Whatever you do, please do not continue speaking louder and louder to match the kids' volume when they are clearly not listening to you. Here's a simple tip. When the kids get loud, you get quiet or immediately stop speaking, especially if it's mid-sentence. Now, most teachers, I think, fear doing this because they think that when they stop, the kids are going to just keep on talking. And, that could happen. So here's when you're going to pull out this move. The next time you give a quiz and they're clearly not listening to you as you're giving the directions, just start giving out answers. For example, it might look like, class, before we begin the test, I need to go over. The answer to number 1 is A. The answer to number 2 is D. Pretty soon the kids will hear you and they'll be like, shh, she's giving out answers, shh. And they'll be quiet. And then you can finish giving out your directions. My next suggestion for being a more welcoming speaker is to make sure your hands are visible. Having visible open palms conveys trust and receptivity. By the way, this suggestion always reminds me of that scene in Talladega Nights where Will Ferrell's character is being interviewed and he's like, I'm not sure what to do with my hands.
We're real happy with what was going on. And at the end of the day, you got to be happy.
This is one of those things that's going to take practice, especially if you want your gestures to feel natural. And now I feel very self-conscious about what I'm doing with my hands. Don't do this. Anyway, the body posture I see many new teachers do is either having their arms just hanging down at their sides like this, or they grip the podium for dear life. Strangely enough, I found that it's easier to practice hand gestures while sitting down, especially if you have armrests. So try it out the next time you're having a dinner party with friends or in a class setting. You can practice while you're at a teacher table with a small group of students. Additionally, it's nice to have a prop. So holding a whiteboard marker or a TV remote will give your hand something to do and naturally result in a bit more of movement since you can use it to gesture. Another body language tip is to use proximity to your advantage. Stand in the middle of the room or move throughout the classroom and stand next to student desks while you're talking to them. Don't retreat back into the board at the front of the class, and also don't hide by sitting and teaching from your desk. You can always place a podium or lectern at the front of the class if you want something to hold your materials and to stand behind. Just don't anchor yourself to it for the entire day. My next strategy is to introduce topics with a story. Now, I don't mean long, drawn-out narratives every time you teach, but just throw in an anecdote every now and then because people naturally want to know how a story ends. I was once speaking to a nun at a Catholic school who was an extremely charismatic presenter, and she told me, you need to tell more stories. There's a reason why the Bible is full of parables. So, to recap, you're going to plan what you're going to say, slow down your speech, do something with your hands, and begin with a story. Let me put these 4 techniques to use so that you can see how they work together. But wait, you already did. Let's go back to the beginning of this video. Because I love organization systems so much, my 2nd grade classroom is one of those that first-year teachers like to peek in on and check out. See what I mean? So you have some techniques to practice and you have your content ready to go. Let's talk about how to get kids to want to listen. I'm not talking about planning super over-the-top, high-engagement lessons. Everyone thinks that they have to spend their first year learning all the curriculum, but get to know your students instead. You have years to get proficient at your curriculum. What you want to focus on in your first year is systems that you can maintain and hone for the rest of your career. Here are a few simple ideas you can do to get to know your students and win them them over. I always, no matter what grade, greet the students at the door and have a one-on-one daily check-in. Genuinely care about how they're doing. Sit with them at lunch and ask about their interests. Reach out to parents on day one and get as much information about your students and their families as you can. Another important skill to practice is showing your students gratitude. I think it's amazing to be part of someone's early educational development and to teach them how to read. So I thank my students all the time. You have to imagine that every kid is wearing a little invisible sign that says, "Make me feel important." And as you begin to build rapport, you'll also create a sense of mutual respect. And once that's established, you're not going to be afraid of trial and error and making mistakes. The best two things that I've done to instantly gain the respect of a group of students is to apologize to them when I've been wrong and to admit when I don't know something. All it takes is "Oh, that's a really great question. I don't know about that yet, but let me look into it." My final tip is how to go about getting help when you need it. Here are the 3 types of people you are going to make new friends and allies: the front office staff, the teachers who had your students last year, and your union reps. The front office staff is your first line of defense against everything. They know the school schedule 3 years in advance. They control all of the information coming and going. And most importantly, they can make your life incredibly easy. They know everyone and everything, and they can be a huge asset for you during your first year and beyond. Treat them with respect, never snap at them or be rude, and make sure to bring them lots of treats. Your next stop are the teachers who had your students last year. Go to them, ask for help directly. They're going to love it. They're going to tell you everything you need to know about each of the kids and their families. They're going to know approaches that work the best to motivate your students and things that they tried that didn't work. Plus, you can ask them for advice on things like lesson planning, student groupings, and curriculum. Finally, go to your site's union reps. They are a wealth of knowledge, and if you live in a state that doesn't have a teachers union, you can always talk to the people in your district in charge of your new teacher project or clearing your credential. But your union rep is going to know everything that is and is not part of your contractual obligations. They're also going to help you set really healthy boundaries around work-life balance. Additionally, they know all of the district support systems in place to help you. So maybe there's a curriculum coach who can model a reading lesson for you with your actual students while you sit in the back of the class and watch. Or maybe there's a technology specialist who will show you all the awesome online programs and sites for your class. You might even have district-created lesson plans that you can use so that you're not creating everything from scratch. I think the really important thing to know is don't be afraid to ask for help. We teachers love helping new teachers because we all remember what it was like to be new. And personally, I find it super rewarding to work with new teachers. I think your energy is fantastic. You just came out of school learning all the new teaching strategies and pedagogies. How do you say that? Pedagogies. You could probably tell me how to pronounce that. Point being, you have something to offer so that it can be mutually beneficial. And if you don't have many colleagues to ask, you can always ask our community by posting a question in the comments. I found that teachers are incredibly supportive, and I'm sure our collective experience can certainly give you some suggestions or begin to steer you in the right direction. And at the very least, you could post a comment who you picked as your Judi Dench. I really hope these suggestions are able to help you as much as they've helped me over the years. And if it's any consolation, my first rule of teaching is to be teachable. I am constantly learning from my colleagues and especially my students. So just know that you're not the only one who feels like the new kid. If you're looking for some really fun and engaging activities to play with your students that are sure to win them over, then check out this playlist of my classroom activities that my students chose as their favorites, whether I was teaching second grade or middle school.